3 weeks in. You can already look at a couple teams and say, I am not scheduling you for a postseason berth. I like to get rid of some teams early, and they already have a few on my radar.
Stick a fork in them.
Well,
I'm ready to fork some teams.
You hear every year the stat. If you start 0-3, you're pretty much cooked. Now, that is not across the board, but that is certainly something that portends to doom. If you can't get that first W within the first 3 games, we have a bunch of 0-2 teams. So this is, I wish Chris Wesseling was here, but this is what we often talk about as the caged animal game or the cornered animal game.
Ooh,
and there are a bunch of them because there are teams that know full well the pressure and what they'll put themselves, the position they'll put themselves in if they can't figure out a way to get to 1-2 through 3 weeks. So we're going to break down all those games. And it's going to be fun. And by the way, Mark, this time, about 10 days from now, a quarter of the regular season will be over. So think about that. Already.
Honestly, I think part of this thing about being home the way that we are nonstop, it just feels like it's suddenly always, we're suddenly doing the show. And then the rest of the week races by. Maybe this is the only thing of importance that I have in my life. Maybe that's what I'm learning. But we're here again.
Hope your kids don't listen to this.
Is the door closed?
Well, they're not listening to this. They're not listening to anything I'm saying. So the theme there is consistent.
All right. So you know the theme of our Thursday shows. We have a draft where we pick each of the games, and it just so happens that the old Zeuser is picking first, and it is the no-brainer of no-brainers to get us going here. It is Monday Night Football. It is the Ravens. It is the Chiefs. And my goodness, this feels like, and it doesn't take a football genius, and I'm not one, to guess that this could be an AFC game, a championship game preview. And how exciting it must be for the Monday Night Football booth. Wow, Bob, Greasy in a big spot there. Riddick. I mean, everyone has got to be on their top game because this is excellent. And, you look at what the Ravens have done the first 2 weeks. They've been dominant. I had to bump them up to number 1 on my power rankings this week because they're clicking at all cylinders. And the last thing that we were waiting for them to do is look like the Ravens of last year on the ground. And then what do against Houston? They run for 153 yards in the fourth quarter to go well over 200. So you got Lamar Jackson passing better than ever. You have the running game just as dangerous. You have the defense making life hell for the opposition. I just think the Ravens are the best team in football right now. But the Chiefs, of course, Greg, are the defending Super Bowl champions, and they're also off to a 2-0 start. So make the case why the Chiefs can win this game.
Well, because it's Patrick Mahomes and because it feels so wrong that everyone is picking the Ravens here, that the Ravens are a significant favorite and that Patrick Mahomes is a significant underdog in any game seems wild. But I'm doing it too because you have to judge it based on what you've seen, and the Ravens are better right now than the Chiefs. You look at the matchup when the Ravens are on offense and the young players that they had. They didn't just come back and be the same. They're better. They're younger. They're faster. Guys like Devin Duvernay is faster. J.K. Dobbins is faster. Miles Boykin is back, and he just looks faster to me. And you think of those guys matching up against the Kansas City Chiefs linebackers, who so far have really struggled. I mean, you can't name them. It's Neiman, it's Wilson, it's mismatches against the tight ends and the running backs of the Ravens. And I think that this Chiefs defense is going to have a hard time getting stops.
I would look at Baltimore's defense too, which, it's going to get overlooked because of all the weapons in Lamar Jackson. But 2 weeks in a row, I mean, you watch what the Browns did against the Bengals, and you go back to the way that Cleveland looked against Baltimore and the way that Houston looked against Baltimore. Baltimore's defense turns the opponent into an identity-free offense. The Houston Texans, to me, did not look like themselves at all because you got guys like Patrick Queen, the rookie linebacker, making plays. Calais Campbell has been an awesome signing for Baltimore, and Marcus Peters seems to pick the ball off in a big spot week after week. I just think this is a fascinating matchup to see if the Chiefs can look like the Chiefs against this defense.
And boys, that I am the owner of the Kicker Club. which is a place where all kickers could come in and gather and dance to some hot club music and get bottle service. And not only is this the matchup of arguably the two best teams in football, it's the two best kickers in football. Justin Tucker is off to another indestructible start for the Ravens. He might go down as the greatest kicker of all time. But what Harrison Butker did on Sunday put the whole league on notice that he is right there in that conversation. And you know, I kid about the kickers, but it is a reminder how great these teams are at all three levels, and how the Chiefs, you know, they didn't play great against the Chargers, but it was interesting to me to see how this defense and special teams was able to pick up Patrick Mahomes. It's not just a bunch of satellites around Mahomes. And I know their defense might not be an all-time defense, but it is a reminder that they can really win a lot of different ways. It's not just Mahomes and Prey.
Not against the Ravens, though. You got to score points. They're relying a little too much on Butker. They are not the same Chiefs offense so far. It's too weak. It is nothing to worry about. But Patrick Mahomes has completed one pass that went over 20 yards in the air the entire season. I mean, that is not Patrick Mahomes. He has less 20-yard completions this season. That includes runs after catch than Jeff Driscoll. So I'm not that worried about them. But early in the season, and this was similar to when they played last, the Chiefs started out and they looked like the better team, and the Ravens were very lucky to hang with Kansas City last year, also in week 3. Why are we playing in this in week 3, by the way?
Yeah,
Let's do it later in the season.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Chiefs are ready right now, just like the Ravens weren't quite ready for the Chiefs early last year.
I mean, the Chiefs had a couple games last year where they were a little slow out of the gates. Mahomes had 60 yards passing at the half last week. So the idea that they're this invincible spaceship ready to just rip through 16 opponents is not the case. They have to work through a few things themselves. But I would rather this be late in the year maybe, but I like seeing this right now just to get a measuring stick for where we are with the AFC, because everyone clumps Baltimore and Kansas City together at the top, and they should. I mean, then the fall off is steep after that. But I'd like to know right away who's going to take this thing, and I think it's an interesting test for Mahomes. I really do, and I mean, I'm just going to sit down on my couch and watch this thing. Shut the doors, no one's allowed in.
And correct me if I'm wrong. There's a different structure now with the playoffs where only the number 1 seed has a bye. So think about what this could mean. The winner of this game has the tiebreaker head to head, which means whoever loses not only has to finish with an equal record. No, they have to finish one game better if they hope to have that number 1 seed, if it does indeed come down to these two teams. Do we all have the Ravens? Because that would feel like the kiss of death.
Yes, we do.
All right. Well, congratulations, Chiefs, on a 3-0 start.
Yes.
All right. Up next in the draft, Greg Rosenthal.
Okay. Surprise pick here. I am going with the Buffalo Bills and the Los Angeles Rams in Buffalo.
Wow.
I'm excited about this game.
Interesting.
2 undefeated teams early.
That was like Clelin Ferrell 4th overall reach by Rosenthal.
Well, you know what? Farrell made a game-winning play last week,
right.
and I love this matchup early because I know the Josh Allen believers are going to be out in force. It's a great litmus test. I've been seeing them come after me because I've been a bit of a doubter over the last few years. Even Mark Sessler is coming after me. I mean, he puts a tweet out. He says it was an ugly Sunday for Josh Allen hater types. And then talking about Allen, he floats today as a godlike figure from the wilderness. And all I want to say to you, Mark, is like, why don't you just at me? I mean, if you're gonna say it, put my name in the tweet. Just say what you mean.
Greg,
Mark,
this says a lot more about Greg than it does Mark. I'm clearly in your head. I mean, there are people all over the place on Josh Allen. That was not specifically a Greg-centric missive from me.
I don't know.
Well, maybe it should have been, because I've killed this guy, and he might be a system QB. But you know what? That's okay. Jared Goff's a system QB too. Like, that's what quarterbacks are. They're in a system, and the way they've built this system around Josh Allen's legs and short passing, which he's undeniably improved. I mean, he's been more accurate. His touch passes have been better, and the players around him are awesome. They're fun to watch, but I do have some doubts too that when he plays a better defense, and this Rams defense I think counts. Let's see how they do, because he has played the Dolphins and the Jets and some dropped interceptions last week. You know, I'm still holding on to a little doubt.
Yeah, let me tee you up on this, Mark, because Allen is still a bit confounding to me. And I'm not saying I'm holding out and all this, but you watch the 2 games. The numbers are through the roof compared to last year, and you can't take that away from him. He's really producing at a high level. But if you watch these games, he is still doing the things that killed the team in January, that have had doubters like Greg, and to a lesser extent myself, sitting back a little bit, putting the ball on the ground, throwing balls up for grabs, and he's not been getting busted for it yet. Will that happen as the competition gets better? And it is better this week. The Rams have come out of the gate very good on defense. I kid, Greg. I think it is a good pick because I think this is a great game. Mark, have you seen that from Allen? Some of these mistakes that are hidden a little bit by the stats?
I think that's fair because I could look at a pass last week where he clearly could have had Stephon Diggs for a touchdown and it was overthrown. And you get some of that malarkey downfield a little bit. I would also say that was maybe one of only 2 or 3 ill passes he threw all game.
There was a near pick six if I recall.
I just think that the overall Josh Allen experience, it has been improved, and it's markedly improved over these 2 weeks. The production's there. I think that Brian Daboll is someone whose name is going to continue to get magnified as the season goes along. He works really well with Josh Allen, and he works really well. And Stephon Diggs is fit in. I mean, there's another world we live in where Stephon Diggs is upset right now and, not making plays. He has fit right into that offense. I think Cole Beasley, John Brown, they've got a good group of wide receivers, a good backfield. So it doesn't have to be all on Josh Allen alone.
And on the Rams side of things, here's a great side. We'd speculated, is Sean McVay feeling more free now that he doesn't have to worry about feeding Todd Gurley? 7 players had rushing attempts in Sunday's win. Oof. So 6 different players had at least 2 catches or more. So the Rams are spreading things out on offense. McVay looks like he's having the time of his life. Jared Goff looks comfortable again. How much of this, Greg, goes back to the offensive line seeming to be getting back on track?
Rob Havenstein, the right tackle, has gone from one of the best in the league to a disaster last year because he was banged up to now he looks great again. And that makes a huge difference. And they have a system where they rely on guys to make plays after the catch. So you can get rid of the ball quickly. Kupp is playing awesome. Woods is playing awesome. Higbee is playing awesome. And that's why I picked the Rams this week, because I think the Bills defense has had some concerning elements over the first 2 weeks. Levi Wallace at cornerback's really struggling. Their linebackers are a little banged up. They haven't quite been the Bills defense that we expect. So I expect this game to come down to the end, but I kind of like the Rams offense putting up a lot of points.
I'm with you, Greg. I think the Rams, like watching their game last week and reflecting on the Cowboys game too, are playing really like top 7 in the league football right now. And I mean, you're a little banged up at running back. Darrell Henderson probably will get a lot of work. But to your point, Dan, I mean, Higbee, who really was not a part of the equation a couple years back when they were so centered and funneled around Gurley, is a huge part of the offense now. I think that this is like Rams 2.0, and McVay probably was driven. He heard everyone saying he's not the little boy genius anymore. Well, look at, he's reorganized the entire attack. They're fun to watch. And I mean, they put it on the Eagles. I know the Eagles are having their issues, but the Rams are for real.
We saw Sean McVay. He made it be known that he's been working hard in the gym in that Hard Knocks premiere. He doesn't want to be seen as a boy anymore. He's a man.
He's not a boy.
All right. We're just getting started here. So many more games to get through. So when we get back, tune back in for the draft. I love draft season. Welcome back to the broadcast. Mark Sessler, it's next to you, buddy. Oh, excuse me, Mark, you're up next.
I'm up next, and I love what's happened here in the draft so far. You guys took the obvious picks there, at least Dan did. I'm going one out of the blue. Las Vegas Raiders at New England Patriots. This game to me, you look at the slate every once in a while and you say, this sticks out to me. The Raiders were fascinating on Monday Night Football. And, John Gruden, who I basically dismissed a couple of years ago, is doing a good job. Can you imagine if you're John Gruden and in the course of a week, you knock out Sean Payton and now have a chance to take out Bill Belichick? That's telling everyone, put me back up there on top of that mountain. I'm not a has-been hanging out in the desert. The Raiders are built around some really interesting star players, and Darren Waller, who was incredible on Monday night, and Josh Jacobs, who I think is as fun to watch right now as any running back in the league. He has completely grown as a running back in terms of his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. I think this Raiders offensive line, which is a little banged up, Incognito out of the mix now too, that's a little bit of a concern against the Patriots team that is well coached as any sports team in all of sports right now. And I'm telling you, the idea of seeing Cam Newton go up against the Raiders, I like this game, guys.
Wow, giving Belichick love even over the Tampa Bay Lightning coaching staff right now is a big call.
Excellent work.
I got to.
I'm fascinated by this. Belichick and Gruden have always had a mutual appreciation society. And I think the way they're running their offenses says a lot about where the NFL is in 2020. I think the Raiders and the Patriots offenses are built specifically to go up against these dime defenses like the Patriots have. I think the Raiders are perfectly positioned to grind defenses which count on these cornerbacks into dust. You mentioned Josh Jacobs. They also have a great group of tight ends, including, Fabian Moreau and Jason Witten's in there blocking, and they are a power team. And I think the Patriots built their offense in a way to go up against these nickel and dime lightweight defenses and grind them down. So I think it's a mismatch this week. When both offenses have the ball, they're bigger, they're stronger, and I think they're going to have successful long drives. It's one of those games I don't expect a lot of possessions, and I don't expect a lot of stops by either defense.
I thought it was maybe the kiss of death for your fantasy team if you own Darren Waller in your leagues when Bill Belichick started this week off by saying, it's been a long time since there's been a guy in the league like Darren Waller. So now you think about it, okay, so it's definitely on Belichick's radar that the Raiders offense is running through Waller. And you get a feeling that he's going to go out of his way to try to shut down Waller and see if Derek Carr and company can make things happen without that dynamic tight end. Because Waller was so important, and I know he's a little banged up this week too. He's on the injury report with a knee, so you wonder how that factors in. But he was so important every time Derek Carr needed somebody. He needed to pick up whether it was 10 yards or 3 yards or 15 yards. Waller was the guy, and that's why he only had 103 receiving yards on 12 catches, but it felt like he had 300 yards because every time they needed a play and to move the sticks, there he was.
Yeah, the Saints had no answer for him. I would also watch. I think Bryan Edwards is an interesting rookie at wide receiver too, and they need some of their young wideouts to make a contribution for Derek Carr, who I think they had 3 sacks in the first quarter. And one of those was definitely on Carr, just holding on to the ball too long too. To me, I cannot wait to see what Josh McDaniels does, though. I think Josh McDaniels, because he's been in New England forever and had Tom Brady, it's like, yeah, we get that he's good. But to come and create this entire offense around Cam Newton and trust Cam Newton on the ground, but also to throw the ball the way he has been and have Julian Edelman play the way he has last week. Julian Edelman, that was the best game of his entire career, and it looked like it. To me, this Patriots team, you can point out to all the weaknesses, but I don't really care about that with New England. They find a way to get it done, no matter who's on the field.
By the way,
Holly Hobby could run for 106
yards. You can trust
yards.
Josh McDaniels with Cam Newton, but just don't trust him with a handshake. That's all. That's important.
What is that supposed to mean? Please,
that's the Colts.
Okay, McDaniels. Let's give him some credit, and
exactly.
I know what it means. They're scheming up some plays, I think, because they don't really have a ton of athleticism. But let's give most of the credit to Cam Newton. Give me a break. This guy, it's not like it's the old Cam Newton. This is better. He's throwing the ball better. And it was one performance in terms of how he was throwing it. But that was as accurate down the field consistently as he's ever been in his entire career. So whatever the reason for that is, and the pass protection has been awesome, and so that's part of it. If he throws like this, I mean, it is outrageous that he's on the Patriots right now. They didn't want him. No one wanted him. I mean, they're paying him less than Brian Hoyer. He was a free agent for 3 months, and he's out playing and throwing the ball like he's never done it. And with the threat of the run, that's going to change defenses. I'm so impressed. I think it's one of the biggest developments of this young season, how good Cam Newton looks. It's outrageous. You're mad, Dan, because you said the Patriots weren't special anymore. Cam Newton's special. He can make.
He does look special. I mean, 1-1's not that special, so let's calm down. But you know what? The Patriots have been blessed with more than their share of luck over the last 20 years, and this is more of it. I mean, there's no reason. You're right. There's no reason he should be on the Patriots playing for $1 million. But when
you've been your corner,
when you've been touched,
just a little bit of like excellent preparation, though, Dan. It's not all luck. It hasn't just been nothing but luck.
When you're touched by the hand of God, the way the Patriots have been, I don't know what they did to deserve this, but good for them. And Cam Newton, who does look truly excellent.
I'm going to go somewhere a little weird here. I don't think maybe this is where you guys would go with this pick, but I'm going to go Bengals at Eagles. And it really starts for me for one reason, Joe Burrow. Well, there's two things. Number one, Joe Burrow, I want to track every one of his games. I think this is one of the, you talk about Cam Newton being a big story in New England, and it is, but Joe Burrow raising the Bengals out of, they were basically sleeping 6 feet under the past couple of decades. And Joe Burrow comes in and he's sort of a transformative guy under center that can make you think entirely different about this team, about Zach Taylor at head coach. So I like the situation, but the flip side of it is the Eagles in a place of immense chaos. You're 0-2. Your sound operators are unfurling boos at Carson Wentz's interception in the end zone in your home stadium. No other team is thinking that way right now. No one's dealing with that. So I think this is an interesting situation where if you're an Eagles fan, you're thinking, the way that I was as a Browns fan a week ago, Joe Burrow could come in and completely cause and spin total madness inside your organization. Can the Eagles hold off Cincinnati? The Eagles offense to me has looked formless, identityless. I cannot figure out what they're trying to do at this point. Carson Wentz looks a little bit lost. I think he has a reason to feel lost with what they put on paper so far.
Well, they're 29th in yards per play. They're 32nd in turnovers. They're 31st in yards per turn. I mean, they're a disaster, and they're losing Jalen Reagor, who looked pretty good in the first few weeks. And Peterson, Doug Peterson, their coach, got mad at a reporter a little bit this week who said, "Have you ever played quarterback? These throws he's missing aren't layups." Well, I mean, some of them are over the middle of the field. This was a great interception by the Rams last week that turned the game around. But he also, Carson Wentz, missed a 3rd and 5 early in the game where Zach Ertz is wide open and it goes 15 feet over his head.
Hey.
And those are the type of throws that you're just like, what is happening here? And the drive stops because of that. And this is a great matchup for him to turn it around. But he's feeling it. There's reports in Philadelphia how his teammates aren't really trying to console him. I mean, it's getting ugly early, but the Bengals are slump busters. They were a slump buster for Baker Mayfield. I think they can be for Carson Wentz.
I'm hoping that reporter shot back at Doug Peterson. Have you ever filed a gamer on deadline for the early edition? Because it is actually.
That's the right comeback.
Pretty scary.
It's pretty stressful.
Yeah, Wentz was a mess last week, and I was so surprised by it. And you look at this game, and it does feel like a perfect get-right game, but I was shaken by that Week 2 performance. And the Rams obviously are a good team, but his inability, Wentz, to get things going and get in a groove. When he's been healthy, he's been just such a consistent player. The fact that he has not been that guy for them when they need it, that's a problem. And I think everyone's excited to see Joe Burrow back on the field. He's quickly becoming appointment television for football fans, and it will be 10 days between games. So we see what he does. I mean, can you imagine what happens? And I don't think the players can hear those piped-in boos on TV, but can you imagine what would happen if Cincinnati went into Philly and dropped the Eagles to 0-3? I almost want to lock up the Eagles, but again, you just can't trust them based on what you've seen.
Ooh, I trust them.
I'm with you. The one thing that to me is another X factor is, we all watched AJ Green look like AJ Green 14 years from now on last Thursday night. So this is a key centerpiece of their passing game. If he's not going to be who we expected him to be, that is a ugly development for the Bengals.
Well, for AJ Green, he has basically missed a year and a half. He missed all of training camp. He's someone who is hurt throughout August. So I'm going to give him a little, a wider berth to get into form. But I do think we need to calm down a little on Burrow because he's very exciting. And I think he's playing really well and he's promising. But their passing attack's bad. I mean, the Bengals' offense is bad. He's last in the league in yards per attempt by a lot. I mean, he's deep into the Gabbert zone. There is no one even close to him to his 5.2 yards per attempt. So they're very condensed. They're limited. They have a bad offensive line. He can look good despite the surroundings, but they are not an effective offense right now.
But I just think people watching can see some flaws in the overall scheme,
Absolutely.
But you're not looking at Burrow and saying he doesn't see the field or he's not making the throws. You can see everything there that you see in other quarterbacks that bloom into something great. So I think the excitement is complete legit.
You don't want to be that guy and be like, oh, get your head out of the numbers, nerd. He passes the eye test, but he does. I mean, if you're watching the games, you see the plays that it's all there for him. And it's one of the craziest stats. And Greg, that wasn't a shot across your bow. Don't worry. I know you watch it in all different ways.
Greg's getting a lot of subtweet action here in this
he
show.
had 61 attempts, Burrow, against the Browns and didn't throw an interception. For a rookie making his second start, that is remarkable. Anyway.
Might say more about the Browns, Mark.
Oh, speaking of subtweets.
There's something else to look at there, but I like Burrow.
All right, we'll be right back after this. Welcome back. Greg, you're up.
All right, I will take the primetime game, Saints and Packers on Sunday night. Good one for Alan Chris.
Yes, and it is time now for Road to Victory, presented by the United States Marine Corps. Oh, what a perfect game.
Makes me even more excited. You're going to New Orleans. You can't have the fun that you normally have. It's all business, and you can put a big-time NFC rival, the Saints, into a big hurt. I know they're not 0-2, the Saints, but it feels like it. Feels like this is almost a cornered animal game for the Saints, because you look at the two quarterbacks, and Breeze is trying to figure out what plays work. Sean Payton's trying to figure out what plays work for him. Meanwhile, on the other side, you have Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers in as good a sync as we've seen. I think of an image at the end of last week's game where you just saw Rodgers and LaFleur, and Rodgers puts his arm around LaFleur, kind of like LaFleur's the little brother, and he's like, you know what, buddy? You're doing pretty well now. I do respect you, Matt LaFleur. You're getting guys open. You're having the running backs in the pass in the passing game. It's really good. I love the sync that they have. It's so different than the storyline we came into a year ago.
Greg, that is not.
I'm
that
one
is
of the
not
people.
a detail that you pick up on the condensed game watch. That's a guy that watched,
No.
the entire broadcast.
I'm definitely one of the people that put Green Bay into the soft 13-3 category that so annoyed not only Dan, our host, I believe, but Aaron Rodgers and others, and maybe it was a little disrespectful. This team, though, is what I think of when I think of a 13-3 team. This is a much better Packers team than a year ago on offense. And I think when you're getting this MVP level version of Aaron Rodgers, it makes Aaron Jones in the running game so much more dangerous. And we saw he had 200 total yards last week, Aaron Jones, and it's a whole another dimension. And I can't believe that it was a month ago that we were basically writing Aaron Rodgers' eulogy, and now it's being written for Drew Brees. And the idea that we're watching this Saints team potentially fade in two straight primetime games, I'm just not ready to write off Brees yet. I see what you're seeing. I see the arm strength not, diminishing to some degree. But you don't think Sean Payton is in the lab cooking up a little surprise here, saying, I'm not going to go out like this?
Well,
not quite yet.
I'm with you, Mark. And interesting stat that popped up this week and Wes has been beating the drum on this, that Drew Brees can't beat teams downfield. His arm has become a liability to the point where the offense is being hurt by it. But if you look back at over the last 3 or 4 years, when Brees was still manning an elite offense and they were scoring a ton of points, he was near the bottom of the league every year in the average air yards per attempt stat that I like to throw around for Teddy Bridgewater. So he hasn't been a mad bomber for years now, and it's worked. So I'd be more concerned by what we saw on Monday night with his loss of accuracy, which could be a simple mechanical flaw or just a bad night, to start to pick up whether or not he's truly in a deep decline. Because saying he doesn't beat teams downfield with throws, he hasn't been doing that for a long time.
Right,
sure,
he did throw one interception.
Accurate,
it was his unbreeze an interception that you've seen. That was just one of the worst picks he's thrown in years.
If he's not accurate, who is he? I mean, that's what Drew Brees
absolutely
brings to you. He needs it, but he needs a good running game, and I think he's going to get it this week. I mean, that's the thing. I think you can minimize the pain of Drew Brees by just handing the ball off to Alvin Kamara. It is a perfect matchup. Mike Pettine's defenses are allergic to stopping the run. I mean, they've never done it. They love giving up big games. Even this year, like they got 6 defensive backs on the field. They're just inviting you to run all over them. And Kamara looks back to his Little Wayne, I'm a freak. There's no running back like me in the entire NFL mode that he was in for the first 2 years of the league. So I think he has a big night.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And keep an eye on what's going on with Devontae Adams and his health. He exited week 2 with the hamstring. I saw it again in the week 2 win for the Packers. There are yards being left on the field by these non-Devontae Adams pass catchers. As much as we want to pump up the Allen Lazards and the MVSs of the world, they're going to need to be better if Adams is compromised or not around for the Packers. All right, we'll be right back after this. Welcome back. Okay, I'm up. Snake into me in a big spot. All right, let's start here. Speaking of cornered animal game, the Houston Texans have to go up to Heinz Field now to face the Steelers, and this has been the unholy terror trio of the NFL to start the season for the Texans. Oh my goodness. Chiefs, Ravens, Steelers on the road, 1, 2, 3, and you got to win one of these games to really be a player. And I listen, this Bill O'Brien Texans team doesn't have a good vibe around it right now. But this is also right around the time when you write off a Texans team and then they deliver a big performance and they get themselves back upright and then they win a few games in a row. And then all of a sudden, like, you forgot, oh, wait, remember when they were on the brink? So I feel actually good, despite what we've seen on the field, that Bill O'Brien and Deshaun Watson are going to come to play up in Pittsburgh. But that, I don't know if that's going to be enough, Mark, because the Steelers look as good as anybody in the league just about through 2 weeks. And they're in their building, and a defense that's been giving everyone fits is going to probably do a good job, you'd think, against the Texans offense that has not figured out where they are post DeAndre Hopkins yet.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could make a case and say we don't know who Houston is right now because they've played the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. What it tells me is this is a playoff team of old, potentially still, but one that is not at the upper echelons of the AFC. And if I count on one thing in this game, it's Pittsburgh's pass rush. It's TJ Watt. And I don't know, if you're Houston, how you counteract that. When I look at this offensive roster, who is extremely special outside of Deshaun Watson? What does he have around him that if you're Pittsburgh's defensive coordinator, you are absolutely being kept up at night? I'm not trying to harp on DeAndre Hopkins being sent away, but the wide receivers who are adequate are not making a difference. Not in these two games. This is another team that I thought was rendered rather formless over the last 2 weeks. I'm trying to figure out who the Texans are right now.
Right, they're searching, because you know what they don't have is Deshaun Watson running the ball either. His rushing yards have gone down each year. Remember his rookie year where the offense is kind of built around his athleticism? That's not there right now. I think their offensive talent's fine except for the line, but we just saw it. You just warmed up against a Chiefs defense that loves to blitz, and you didn't really protect them. Then you play the Ravens who love to blitz. How about we play the best pass rushing team in the league on the right side? It's TJ Watt. He is the best pass rusher in the NFL right now, and he's mostly going to be lining up against Titus Howard, one of those draft picks for the Texans who it looks like they've missed on, and they need to hit their draft picks because they don't have any draft picks. No. So when they miss it, it really hurts double.
And on the Steelers side of things, their offense is very turned into a pick your poison situation. With Chase Claypool, he had the 84-yard touchdown in week 2. He's made himself an instant difference maker on this offense. And when you add him with Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster and James Conner and Ben Roethlisberger, who has not missed a beat in his return to action, this offense is extremely difficult to deal with. So the Houston Texans defense, which is also not being doing the job to start, it just, as much as, again, to circle back, not to belabor the point, this feels like such a spot where a Bill O'Brien team gets right. But nothing feels right about the Texans in this matchup. And that's why I still think the Steelers are going to win, and the Texans will be 0-3.
Yeah, I mean, I do think Bill O'Brien has probably some concerns about what is exactly happening in the NFL schedule-making office. Who did he offend to get this scenario out of the gate? But still, I mean, if you are the team that people thought you were, you need to take one of these 3 games. And for me, Pittsburgh, they seem to be growing each week. And you look at, like you mentioned, Chase Claypool, and to me, Big Ben, like when if you got Big Ben with 80% of the arm, big problems. That's not happening. This team is kind of stacked on both sides of the ball right now.
They still struggle to beat Jeff Driscoll. It should be pointed out that Driscoll had the Broncos in the red zone with a chance to win the game right at the end, and they came up short. So they haven't been perfect, but it's great to win games if you're the Steelers with a chance to get better. Their offensive line looks like it'll be a little healthier this week, and I feel fine about it. And that's why I am locking this game up for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay.
Feel very confident. Sometimes when a team shows you they're bad, like the Texans, you just got to believe them after a couple weeks. I believe them.
All right. That's fair. All right. It's snakes to the old Zeuser. And that's why I will move to the 4 p.m. slate. and check in on the Cowboys at the Seahawks. Okay. First of all, what a great value add in the draft here. This late in the draft.
What a steal.
The Cowboys coming off that 40-39 win, where still you come out of that game, these guys got a ton of problems, but also fluky, ultimately. The 4 fumbles in the first quarter, I believe it was, against the Falcons, that's not typically gonna happen. So even though there are blemishes with the Cowboys overall, and you worry about their defense, especially going on the road against Russell Wilson in God mode right now, Mr. Unlimited truly has been that so far this season. You also wonder that a 40-39 kind of like all-time Cowboys regular season win, if that inspires, gets the juices flowing, and they go to Seattle and really put up a big fight. So this is what this game comes down to for me. There are a lot of people, and I was a little bit on the fence, but probably more on the side of the fence of the Cowboys are good this year. The Cowboys are a 10, 11, maybe 12-win team. Then you think there's no reason they shouldn't be able to go up to Seattle and hang with the Seahawks for all their greatness at quarterback and their ability to score points themselves and what they did against New England with the big goal line stop at the end. This isn't an unbeatable team. So I think the Cowboys are hanging in this game, but the Seattle, I understand that they're the favorite.
I just have concerns about the fact that, if you're the Cowboys, you were flamed by Jared Goff. You were flamed by Matt Ryan. I mean, and now you've got the Cowboys are a good team. I agree with you, Dan. The Seahawks are a special team. There's something going on there that just it has me feeling something that I'm going to be locking up Seattle in this game. All right, because I'm 2-0 in the locks. It's about to get to 3-0. The special sauce in Seattle is Jamal Adams on defense. 2 games in a row, all over the place. They don't have pass rush. He created against Cam. Remember him dragging Cam down. He was all over Newton in various ways, and I cannot wait to see
a little bit of
what he does against
coverage,
Dak
but
Prescott.
We don't have to worry about that, I guess.
I'm just saying he could do a lot of things. I don't want to hear about how safeties don't matter anymore. He matters, and you got to deal with him all game long. And Dak Prescott coming off maybe one of the best games he's ever had. This matchup of Jamal Adams and Dak Prescott, sign me up.
Well, I mean, the Seahawks defense can't stop anyone, though. I love this matchup because I'm with Dan that I think it's going to be in the mid-30s. I think it's going to look like Falcons Cowboys a week ago, where it comes down to the end because both teams are great offensively, and the Seahawks have no pass rush. The Seahawks have really nothing that can stop you on defense. If you look at what DK Metcalf has done, though, the first couple of weeks, to me, that's a big-time development. The route he ran against Stephon Gilmore, the fact that he really won that matchup against Gilmore, I believe Tyler Lockett's a true number 1, and Metcalf is a true number 1 in a much different sort of way. And so they're unstoppable right now. And the Cowboys are so banged up. They're banged up in the secondary. They have as many starters injured really as any team in the league. I believe in the Cowboys to put up 35 and Dak to look great and to entertain us. But I think the Seahawks weirdly are better positioned right now to win a shootout.
Yeah, and I think to your point, the DK Metcalf performance, I think – and sometimes it works out this way, that it happens in prime time where, there's millions and millions of people watching it. I think he announced himself as a star in that game. We knew he was a promising rookie last year who got better as the year went along. But once you start giving Stephon Gilmore the business in prime time, you're basically putting it on notice that you are going to be one of the top guys and you could be an all-pro level talent. So they are set up at wide receiver.
Right. They're also, Chris Carson has been helpful in the pass game too. Russell Wilson had 7 touchdowns before he had 7 incompletions. I don't know how else to describe a quarterback who is in sync at the moment.
All right, we'll be right back after this. Welcome back, Greg. You're up next.
All right, let's go down to Atlanta. This is absolutely a cornered animal game. The 0-2 Falcons against the 2-0 Bears. The two quarterbacks that the Falcons have faced on defense have turned out to be the offensive player of the week in the NFC. So if that happens a third time and Mitchell Trubisky is the offensive player of the week, I don't know if Dan Quinn gets a fourth crack at it. And for his sake, I hope it doesn't happen. And his best route to win is just to ride the arm of Matty Ice. Matt Ryan is playing about as well as you possibly can for an 0-2 team. And the offensive line in Atlanta has also played really well. I think that's been a big change for them. They've put a lot of resources into it, and for the most part, they've protected him well. Now they got to go up against Khalil Mack. Robert Quinn looked really good. Akeem Hicks. When those three guys are together for Chicago, they're cooking with gas. So this is a big time matchup for the Falcons offensive line. But I trust Matty Ice right now, really against anyone.
Yeah, we
look at how Calvin Ridley is playing.
Yeah, we write all these columns over the summer in our writing duties for the .com. One of them was the Superstar Club. I had Calvin Ridley in there, and I'm feeling really good about that through 2 weeks. He was very good for them the last couple of years, but there's something different in what's going on with him right now where you get the feeling this could be one of those 1,400 double-digit touchdown seasons that are shaping up right now.
I just got to wonder, you got to wonder in some of these NFL teams, what is happening inside the locker room? Because the Cowboys last week, you got the Falcons offense playing as well as it ever has. The Cowboys had a 2% chance to win the game at one point last week. And the Falcons defense allowed Dak Prescott and Dallas to score on 7 of their last 8 drives. I mean,
can't happen.
Now I'm not saying Chicago could do that, and I'm not sure they have the guys, but I would just go 3 wide all day long and forget about the fact that Trubisky had about 30 yards passing in the second half last week and 2 interceptions. Wipe it out. You're playing a team that just invites you into the end zone March after March.
All right, so here's my thought on this game. I think the Bears are a very bad 2-0 team. I think they stole week 1 from the Lions with 1 good quarter of offensive football. They got off to a nice start against the Giants, but the Giants were essentially, just mortified after Saquon Barkley went down. So I can't put a team in shock beating that Giants team. I can't give them too much credit for that either. So I think the Bears are well overdue for a loss. I also think, even though it's a couple weeks later than we expected, you're going to start hearing about Nick Foles soon as the guy that needs to enter the picture at quarterback. And with the cornered animal game factored in for the Falcons. Yeah, it's a cornered Falcon. Who wants to corner a Falcon? See what happens. I'm locking it up for the Atlanta Falcons to get a W and bring the Bears down to earth, because that is not an undefeated team, and I don't imagine it will last much longer. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. We keep rolling. Mark Sessler.
All right. Another game I don't peg you guys as heat seeking in terms of your draft picks. So I'm gonna take this one. Cleveland, Washington. Not a big surprise. There's some things I want to see though, and I really for the positive aspects that the offense produced in Cleveland last Thursday night. I thought Baker Mayfield probably played with more confidence and more organization than we've seen in a long, long time, probably all of last season. Can you continue with that? Can the running game, where Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt both have major roles? That was not the case last year. Hunt was dabbled in towards the end of the season after his suspension. These guys both are accounting for 100-plus yards a game if you set them up for that. Can Washington stop the run? Cleveland's defense. Myles Garrett has a great chance here to have an impact game. Washington's line, Garin Christian at left tackle, Wes Martin at left guard have been a disaster. Brandon Scherf, your rock at right guard, is out of the lineup. So Haskins, who has 7 sacks in the first 2 weeks and a lot of pressure, this is an offense that put up one drive last week of more than 20 yards. And, you get 45, 50 minutes into the game. They only had one drive over 50. So the offense has issues. Cleveland really, I understand they're still figuring themselves out a little bit on defense. They're getting healthier. They've got some guys back in the secondary. There's really no excuse to lose this one. I mean, Cleveland, you'd like to see them pick up where they left off and control both sides.
Right. This is such a perfect matchup for the Browns. I mean, they get the Bengals and the football team back-to-back weeks for a Browns defense. It's kind of been a mess so far. They're a little healthier now in the secondary, so that should help them out. But they're playing a team that's in the third week of their preseason. That's Washington. I mean, they're not ready. They're sort of remedial, and they're playing a defense that's good rushing the passer, but I don't think the Browns need to rush the passer. I mean, you should just hand the ball off to Nick Chubb and Hunt the whole game. Washington has not been very good stopping the run so far, and that's kind of what you would hope if you're a Browns fan that Kevin Stefanski brings. Just sort of, let's not beat ourselves. And to me, that's the only way you're going to lose to Washington is if you beat yourself.
I think we all got excited week 1 when Washington had the 8 sacks of Carson Wentz, and you said, oh, there's a path here to winning some games and hanging around in the NFC East. Maybe that's still the case, and I think it's a good test of the Cleveland offensive line and Baker to make the right decisions when he is dropping back to pass. But yeah, it seems like it's perfectly set up that if Stefanski does the right thing, that you don't put this on Baker Mayfield and you lean on this running game that was so dominant in week 2. Washington comes off that performance in week 1 and then they're down 20-0 at halftime. And it almost was like, okay, this is really might be closer to who they are than the team that scared people in week 1.
I think so. I mean, this is a classic. What could go wrong after everything we've just said? You have me slightly concerned, but the script is positive.
All right, let's keep moving. Mark, you are up again on the snake.
All right, I'm gonna go Tampa Bay, Denver, and I get that the wattage is low on the Broncos side right now, but watching that Bucs game during the week, I'm just seeing a team that I understand that there have been some chemistry issues early on, and Tom Brady dropping some F-bombs on the sideline last week after a fumble by Ronald Jones. And he's not someone that dips into blue language too often, I don't imagine. Seems like a pretty well-behaved individual.
He go let's effing go? Wasn't that the whole thing? He screamed to people.
He does a lot, actually.
Well, I think so. During these games, it just showed me that if he's been doing that before, we're not getting a less fired up version of Brady.
No,
he
still
was
cares.
Animated. He was animated, and he cleaned up some. The chemistry with Mike Evans in that last game they were on point. I just see an offense that's going to drop 40 on the reg over and over down the stretch. This team to me is just beginning on the reg, Greg. They're just beginning to show what they are. I don't like their backfield situation at all, but I mean, to me, the Bucs are going to be the story of November and December.
Wait, you said you think the Bucs are going to be dropping 40 on the reg?
40 points on offense.
For real?
Book it week after week. Yes, I do.
I'm not seeing that through 2 weeks. That's interesting.
Look at the points they left on the table last week.
Well,
and they did
Arians
the week
was fired
before too,
up
and they're
about
scoring
that.
30-something.
Yes, I think Arians went out of his way to say that they had 7 drops worth 125 yards, which is a weird stat to roll out to the press. But Arians is a different type of dude. So he's, in his mind, and I guess to Mark Sessler's mind, Tom Brady should be coming off a 400-yard game with 4 touchdowns. Maybe that is the case. Maybe it is.
Right, but he was playing the Panthers. He had literally 0 pass rush against him the entire game. So you better deliver in that game. This will be different because the Fighting Fangios, what they do is they lose close games. They lose close games against good teams. And their defense plays better than you think. For all the love we gave the Steelers, that game was eminently winnable for Denver. And I tell you what, I don't know if he could do it 2 straight weeks. And the Todd Bowles defense will send a lot of crazy blitzes at him, and that worked somewhat last week in Pittsburgh.
Oh, here it
comes.
Jeff
Driscoll played great.
There it is.
Jeff Driscoll, he made plays. If you just watched that game and you said Luck was going to give you that, Drew Lock rather, you would have taken it. I mean, Jeff Driscoll made a lot of big-time plays in that game because he's got big-time players. KJ Hamler out there for his first game and Jerry Jeudy together. Those 2 guys – what a combination of route runners. And Bruce Arians said Noah Fant may be the best tight end in the league right now. I'm buying that in terms of I'm not going to put him ahead of Kittle and Kelsey, so that's too far. But in terms of a receiving threat, he's right there. He's right there.
That's a big leap.
Right there with those guys.
Fant was like a drop machine during parts of last year, so that he's made a big leap into year 2. I think Jerry Jeudy, I love to see that, it's not the way they wanted to happen, but with Cortland Sutton out of the picture, Jeudy is going to be a primary part of this offense. We've all talked about it. The dude looks like a star. So, I mean, it's not lights out on Denver entirely, especially with Greg falling in love with their backup quarterback.
I'm not falling in love. I'm just basing it on that one game. The history tells us Driscoll will not keep it up. He is somewhat entertaining to watch, but he played a pretty good game against Pittsburgh. I mean, if we're gonna give Daniel Jones credit for moving the ball up and down the field and coming pretty close, Driscoll did even more. He really did.
The Broncos are in a lot of trouble. A lot.
Yeah, sad. Cortland Sutton is a killer, but they do have a lot of guys. Melvin Gordon looks pretty good. This is a tough matchup. I think the Bucs are going to win games because of their defense. I'm not with Mark. I'm not convinced their offense is ready yet. Eventually they will be. They should get Chris Godwin back, which helps a lot.
Would you say that they would score 25 on the reg, Greg? 23 on the reg? Like,
20,
where are they on the reg?
27 on the reg. 26 on the reg, yeah.
Where are they on the reg scale?
So they're going to get worse. They're going to get Chris Godwin back and get worse. Okay.
They're not playing the Panthers every week. That's the worst defense in the league.
I'm telling you, and I didn't say it was right now. I said in November, they would be the story of November and December. Okay. Check back with me in 2 months, gentlemen.
All right, Greg.
I'll buy it.
You're up, I believe. Is that correct?
All right. I need a late afternoon game, and I'm going to take one I'm truly intrigued by. The Lions heading to Arizona.
Okay.
The Lions need this one bad.
Good value.
They're 0-2. I said last week was a huge game for Matt Patricia. I mean, now you're at the point if you lose this game and you're 0-3 and you head into the bye week, which is only in a couple weeks, and they haven't won a game, he might not get to close out the season, Matt Patricia. And I'm not that surprised that his defense is not playing well. They're banged up, and they never play well. I am a little surprised that Matthew Stafford and the Lions' offense has been very meh. I think Stafford's been a little worse even than his conventional stats say. They get Kenny Golladay back this week. I'm not ready to crown this Cardinals defense just because they slowed down Washington. So this should be an opportunity for Matthew Stafford and Golladay in that backfield to put up some more points because we expected a lot out of this offense. They've been pretty average so far through 2 weeks.
They have been. I mean, I feel like we just haven't really had a chance to see what Darrell Bevell and the Lions wanted to do with this offense yet. I mean, 3 or 4 weeks ago, no one was saying Adrian Peterson would be in the backfield. Well, because Galladay's not been on the field. I mean, Adrian Peterson has had to come in for what has been a really disappointing performance so far from DeAndre Swift. I mean, forget just the week 1 stuff. He just hasn't been the guy on the ground they thought either. So either that happens or it doesn't. But I'm with you that it's been a very disappointing start for an offense that a lot of people talked about as being potentially high-powered a month ago.
The Cardinals are a tough matchup for them as well, especially with Kyler Murray's never been playing with more confidence at the NFL level than he is right now. And he had 2 great rushing touchdowns in week 2 against Washington. Again, to bring up Washington, the team everybody was talking about coming out of week 1, the damage that they did to Carson Wentz and that Eagles line. Well, Kyler Murray seemed pretty okay back there. And DeAndre Hopkins again led the team in targets, catches, yards. This feels like a great spot for the Cardinals to be 3-0 and everyone in the league talking about them coming out of Sunday.
I don't think these two teams are so far apart. I really don't. I guess I got to see a little bit more out of Arizona. They're 2 games in terms of their opponents. I do think Jeff Okudah, the number 3 overall draft pick for the Lions, is a guy that they'll probably look to attack. I mean, what Aaron Rodgers did to him was unfair. I mean, he just went after him the whole time, and if it wasn't for a couple mistakes by the Packers receivers, it would have been about 180 yards on this one guy. And this is where, like, the lack of a preseason, he reportedly struggled in camp. I think it hurts a guy like that. They have injuries, so they have to play him. And it looks like he's just sort of does not have the confidence right now to stick with a guy like DeAndre Hopkins or whoever it is that he's matching up against.
I don't see how you say that the teams are similar, in the sense that, for me, if I'm like a Cardinals fan, a year ago you're wondering, can Cliff Kingsbury, can this thing work? We get that what he did in college. Well, it's working, and it's one of the more exciting developments on that side of the ball in the entire league, where the Lions feel somewhat lost to me, and they have a banged up secondary. It's not a very good secondary, and now you're going to go against a 4 wide receiver offense that is completely on fire. I don't know. I mean, last year these two teams tied. That was a long time ago. Week 1 for a Kyler Murray offense.
And I don't want to belabor the point, because I feel like everyone's kind of on the same page about what's going on at head coach in Detroit. But they've now dropped 4 straight games where they've had a double-digit lead. That has never happened in the history of football. And they have blown 7 double-digit leads in eventual losses since last season. If that doesn't,
he's a defensive coach.
If that is not an indictment of coaching, I don't know what is. Because you look, and I'll use the Rams as an example. Sean McVay and the Rams are now 27-0 in games in which they've had the lead at halftime. Coaching matters when it comes to closing out games, and you see it when a bad coach is involved. I don't know. I don't want to pile on.
Yeah,
but it just seems like we're getting close to time.
Right, and to your point, Dan, when I got on my little August Detroit Lions bandwagon thing with a few other media types,
you're off already?
I immediately
You're not sticking with it? You're not sticking with it?
No, I mean, I'm just saying the bandwagon is like basically hit a wall. I'm still sitting in the bandwagon. It's not going anywhere. But I immediately had someone text me and say, bad idea. You don't know what's going on in that locker room and the way they feel about their coach. So, I was like, well, you might be wrong about that, and he might have been right.
So if you're on
secret correspondent,
let's pick this game then. So I have the Cardinals. Greg has the Cardinals. Mark, if you are still on the bandwagon, obviously they're not starting 0-3, right?
Well, I'm on it because it lacks an ability to jump off it. The bandwagon, I said, has crashed into a wall. I'm not gonna didn't take.
He said
my
these
mind
teams
out
weren't even
with
close. I'm saying I think the Lions.
That's
I'm not buying the Cardinals as a heavy favorite out there in the desert. If you know what I'm saying. I think it'll be a nice close game.
You know what you're saying.
I am taking the Cardinals with eyes open and no concerns.
Well, you're off the bandwagon.
They're going to decimate Detroit.
Yeah, then you're off the bandwagon.
You're not on the bandwagon.
You're not allowed.
I guess I'm the first person that, made some sort of off-season, got excited about something in the off-season in the NFL that 3 or 4 weeks in doesn't look so hot. Being the only person, I'm going to have to handle that situation in the way that I do.
Fair point. All right, let's move on. It's my pick. I will take Titans at Vikings, another wounded, cornered animal in the Vikings, and a team that is very hard to get behind right now, because what have they showed you in the first 2 weeks that makes you think they're going to turn it around? And you can't even say, well, they're in their building up there in Minneapolis, because there's not 75,000 screaming Midwesterners and everything's so weird. We've already seen them get lit up at home in week 1 against Aaron Rodgers. So I still speaking of bandwagons, Mark, I was on the bandwagon of the Vikings this summer, and I said this team had the highest floor of any team in the NFC, I thought. I can't get off the bandwagon, but if you can't be on the bandwagon, Mark, I guess this is my point, but then also not be on the bandwagon. So that's why I still think the Vikings, in spite of all their problems, have enough to get the ship righted, but the ship doesn't get righted if you get bombed out again in week 3 in your building and you head into the quarter pole of the season at a winless mark. So I think the Vikings get right. I'm putting this one on Mike Zimmer. I'm putting it on Big Mike's shoulders and saying, hey, get this team coached up, get this team ready, and beat the Titans, because it's not going to be an easy one either. This is a tough game, Greg, and once again, Ryan Tannehill. A lot of people in the football cognoscente.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got to
Said
complete it.
Tannehill was one and done. It was not going to be the same guy, but he looked just like the Tannehill of 2019 this past Sunday.
Yeah, against the Jags, and this is another favorable matchup where I think he'll be protected well. They're a little healthier up front. This was the game that I had the hardest time picking for in my column this week. Also, it's going to be on Game Day View. Check that out on NFL Network, Friday
Plug
nights,
alert.
8 p.m. DVR it. And I was thinking the same way as you were, Dan, that's just like, well, this is one of those games that a decent enough team, a good coach that has some talent, finds a way to win. And I think the Titans have been a pretty soft 2-0. I think they've played two so-so teams, and they've had a little bit of luck in both of those games. But you know what? I just couldn't do it because I don't know. That I just have to trust that the Vikings' problems that they've shown are potentially going to continue because they seem just personnel related. Their defensive line, other than Ngakoue last week again for a second straight week, was miserable. I don't expect Kirk Cousins to be that bad, but the receiver group's pretty rough. And then you have the cornerbacks are struggling. You're having to have the safeties help out the young cornerback, so that hurts them in the running game. And then you just start like adding up all these different problems. And by the end of the week, and maybe it's because I watched that Vikings-Colts game last and seeing Kirk Cousins 6 for 23 for 59 yards and 3 interceptions in the middle of the fourth, I just couldn't pick them. I couldn't do it. The Titans are too professional. What they do is they beat bad teams lately, and they deserve the respect of my pick. And that's the highest respect you can really have.
I mean, Greg going through a personal crisis over whether or not to pick the Vikings. I see a team in crisis. And, I mean, to your point, Greg, they have 4 quarterback hits and 2 sacks over 2 games. The defensive line is providing no pressure. I mean, the secondary is getting swallowed up. There's nothing here that Mike Zimmer does well that the Vikings are doing well. It's just not matching up. I don't think this is a team that finds its way necessarily. I think they're just probably a 6-10 type of team that got a really bad start.
But you still got to win
things
6
to take
games
away
then
from
at
that.
some point. You got to win 6 games at some point.
Sure, that's what 6-10 would indicate. They would have to at some point win 6 games. I hear you, but the Titans, I don't have a problem with the Titans starting a little bit soft and slow because I think they've been figuring themselves out, but they've come out of these games, and I like Tannehill. To me, the one thing that he has is this he completely invites guys right into the pocket to destroy him as he's unfurling like a perfect pass downfield. 4 touchdowns last week, one of the prettiest games we've seen from a quarterback. And I think people were saying you're not going to get the same statistical outlier version of Ryan Tannehill, but he did it last week. So I don't know if this is like Arthur Smith is like the perfect play caller for this team and understands Tannehill, or if it says a lot about the Dolphins where he was before, or a little bit of all of it together.
I think that Tannehill is a tougher dude than perhaps we give him credit for, but also you take a few more shots like Josh Allen gave him on that beautiful touchdown throw to Adam Humphries, he's going to be visiting the clavicle surgery doctor soon. He's getting walloped.
Not fun.
In the pocket the first 2 weeks, and that is a recipe for disaster for Mr. Tannehill, no matter how tough he is. Okay, snakes to me. All right, I'm going to give you guys a break here. Speaking of bandwagons that are doomed, the New York Jets hopped on that bandwagon in about 1987. And
not going for you.
I would say it's not going that well. It's a trail of tears. Jets at Colts. Beautiful game for the Colts. Awesome setup for them at home against what's been the worst team in football for the first 2 weeks of the season, and a team in the Jets that, on top of all their other issues, can't stay healthy. So you take a team that had a suspect roster entering week 1, and then you strip away multiple players from it, whether it be due to injury or even COVID-19 opt-outs with C.J. Mosley, and what you have is a total disaster at the Hindenburg level. So Brashad Perryman is doubtful to play. Brashad Perryman is, I don't know what his status is, but he's got an ankle issue, likely not playing. Crowder, he is their best wide receiver. He's doubtful to play with an ankle. Denzel Mims, parts unknown with a hamstring injury. Here are the 3 wide receivers scheduled to line up for Sam Darnold on Sunday. Chris Hogan, Braxton Berrios, Josh Malone, who's been on the practice squad the last 3 weeks. No chance. No, I mean, the Colts should walk to win. This game should be done by halftime, and if it's not, the Colts have done something very wrong.
Greg, you watched that Vikings-Colts game. I mean, Indianapolis controlling the ball for like 38 minutes. That was a statement game to me. You don't hear, good times are bad. The players seem to line up for Frank Reich. And one thing that concerns me a little bit, I mean, a lot of things concern me about the Jets. I mean, yes, you did a great job. Mekhi Becton has been awesome at tackle. I mean, that's been a bright spot for them. But then you've got guys you brought.
Mekhi.
He like they needed that to work. You talk about like. No,
I think you said Mekhi. Mekhi
Becton. Well, there we go. First name, not first name basis with him at this point. But this story that came out with like Bradley McDougald and Avery Williamson saying that, coming from other teams, that Jets practice has been such a telling indicator of why they've not shown up on game day. And saying that after 2 games to the press, I just think that, come on, guys. You got to give yourself the best shot here, and they just seem disorganized as possible on top of the injuries.
Well, Gase coaches – go ahead.
Media, we're just looking for warm bodies for wide receiver. I don't want my head coach saying that. I mean, that you just sound defeated. You sound like a guy that's making excuses, and this comes off a week 2 performance by Gase where he just played scared and he coached scared and like he had no interest in really being aggressive and trying to win that game. I don't think, everything's pointing to the same direction, which is the Jets have not fired a head coach in season since Lou Holtz, I believe in 1976. I would not be surprised if that streak ends in 2020 because you're going to continue to hear chatter and you're going to continue to see the losses pile up. And the whole thing with Darnold, with Adam Gase, was they're tied at the hip. He's supposed to make them better. If Darnold's not showing progress through the season, there's zero reason to keep Gase in the building, even through 16 games.
Right. Gase coaches like he thinks his players stink. And you know what? In that press conference kind of said it. And like, I get it. Yeah, you've got the Patriots leftovers at receiver with Hogan and Barrett. Like, that's rough. But you can't coach that way. Your team knows you're coaching that way. Is so many throws short of the sticks on 3rd down. He's trying to win with 5-yard throws. I actually thought Darnold played a solid game last week.
He did.
The whole question is, how do you evaluate Darnold? Stack games like this. If Darnold keeps playing games like this where you can tell he's better than his surroundings, then okay, that's a positive. You're making good decisions and you're making the right throws and reads, and your team is terrible. I thought he played pretty well. Quinnen Williams played well. Mekhi Becton, they found a left tackle. There's a couple little things here, but otherwise, man, in both of these games, the 80-yard run by Mostert on the first play and then the way the Bills game started, it felt like these games are over in 5 minutes. So just hang around for a quarter. Around for a quarter. And I think they maybe can. The Colts offense was not impressive to me a week ago. They were really not in sync. Their defense played outstanding, and I don't know if they're just going to blow out teams the way they play.
In 2+ seasons, Sam Darnold has played with 17 different wide receivers that have caught at least one pass, 18 different starting offensive linemen, and not a running back who has gained more than 800 yards in 2018 or 2019. It's
good to get Gore in there. They're kind of building the offense around Gore. I thought Le'Veon Bell was a progress
don't get me started on that.
So I love the inconvenient truth, getting a lot of runs.
All you Frank Gore people get so quiet once the season starts. Once he delivers one of his
I thought he had a couple good runs.
No, one of his signature 22 for 63 games. I mean, get Michael P. Ryan in there. Get the kid in there. Frank Gore, with all due respect, Greg, progress stopper. That's what he is at this stage.
I mean, he's the only one in a Jets uniform that's going to be going to Canton someday. You should appreciate it.
Greg, you're up. You can't hurt me.
Am I now? All right. Let's go for what early games are left here on the schedule. Wow, there's one.
Scrambling.
It's 49ers and Giants. All right. I'm curious how the Giants come into this game. You lose Saquon Barkley, And Sterling Shepard, I think, is a bigger loss than people realize. But you are really playing the 49ers B team. And I think we almost take for granted Kyle Shanahan that he's such a good coach that his backups, blew out another NFL team. And I know it was the Jets. This will be a tougher matchup, I think, for the 49ers. You're not going to have Jimmy G to start the game. Jimmy G played well last week. Jerick McKinnon starting at running back. He's looked good, but that's relying a lot on him. George Kittle might be back, but their defensive line in San Francisco, man, if you think about the players they've lost, DeForest Buckner is gone. Dee Ford is gone now, maybe for a while, and Nick Bosa is gone for the season. They don't have the same identity, and I think this is a winnable game for the Giants. I do not see the 49ers with so many players out winning games easily against a competitive NFL team. I think the Giants can be competitive. I really do think they're a little better this year than we thought.
There are people asking if the Giants might find their way on offense. A little bit of a Ewing theory scenario without Barkley in there. Is that just completely absurd?
I mean,
yes, when Deion Lewis is your backup, and now it's Devonta Freeman.
Well, it's Freeman. I mean, we have to see what Devonta Freeman is.
I'm not silly.
I find it absurd because he's a complete star.
Who's actually saying that? That's a stupid thing to say.
I'm just it's seen tweets about it, and I'm not saying that
if you're one of those people
PFF's
that sent out the tweet, you're a fool. Saquon Barkley is the most talented guy on that team. Give me that Ewing theory stuff. Mark, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean I'm with you. I don't agree with it either, but it does put extreme pressure on Daniel Jones to
it does
to step in and remove some of the fumbles and the gaffes and the turnovers, because if you're going to grow into what I think Daniel Jones can be, you've got to kill the mistakes. But I don't know. For me, the Niners, this has got to be the most depressing season around based on the injuries. I mean, it was with them all through camp. It's now reared its head in terrible ways in the regular season. And, before last year's Super Bowl run, we were asking if Kyle Shanahan on our pod was on the hot seat and if John Lynch was on the hot seat. It was basically because for 2 straight years prior, they had dealt with nothing but injuries. And, they're right back there. And you can't ask a team to just overcome this. This is the equalizer.
How's Simone doing?
Can I jump in, though?
How's Simone?
Ooh, yeah, Simone's a big
Niners fan. Your wife.
I mean, you could imagine that on the list of, stressful scenarios here in 2020 with kids home all day long. The Niners are not something that Simone is overly concerned about. Good. I don't hear a lot of frantic Niners commentary in our
kitchen. I give her a pep talk, though? Can I give her a pep talk? We did the pep talks on Tuesday. I've got one for the 49ers.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
Your schedule the next 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Giants, Eagles, Dolphins.
Oh, come on.
You just beat the Jets.
Well, you
get to 3-2. You can even lose one of those games, and you get to 3-2 when the tough part of your schedule starts. And listen to all the players that should be coming back. I mean, Deebo Samuel is coming back. Richard Sherman is coming back. Your 2 best running backs, Tevin Coleman and Raheem Mostert, is coming back. Dee Ford, we're not really sure. He hasn't helped you out that much. But at this point, they're expecting him to come back. So Jimmy Garoppolo, he's coming back. Get your guys healthy. Get to 3-2. And you're fine. Yeah, I think the 49ers are going to be fine.
This is a crisis moment for the 49ers, no doubt. But to get the Jets and the Giants, arguably the 2 worst teams in the league back-to-back, and then the Dolphins after that, who aren't that far behind, yeah, you're right. They could definitely come out of this and kind of get their feet back under them. And real quick on the Giants, yeah, losing Saquon Barkley is nothing short of an organizational disaster for that team. So it kind of takes them out of the mix to be even a compelling, buzzy wild card team that scores a lot of points and maybe hangs around in a so-so division. I think that's all out the window. That's the level of loss that is. But you could still use this as an important development season for Jones, and he still has weapons out there to put up some points. He's not like, you look at his situation compared to Sam Darnold from earlier, at least he has some pieces, and you could see whether he's developing in year 2, and that's so important for this Giants team. All right.
I like Greg suddenly, offering inspiring speeches about the Niners after he's been burying them and pronouncing them as dead
they
on
have
arrival
an opportunity
for the last
I'm
8 or 9 weeks on our show.
to survive this. I was impressed Kyle Shanahan can blow any team out with what he's got going on. And if you can win a couple games, at least you can survive.
All right.
It's a wicked long season, so we'll see.
We got one more game on the schedule, if I'm not mistaken, Mark Sessler.
And that is, I believe,
Carolina
at the Chargers. Well, where are we right now with the quarterback situation? Because it's hold on, I've got to get my act together
let's
here.
touch on that. Let's start here. What happened with Tyrod Taylor? It was a big mystery last week. He was slated to start. He has some type of medical issue involving his chest. He goes to the hospital. Justin Herbert gets his first start, plays well in a loss to the Chiefs, and then it came out, it was reported this week that there was some medical failures involving an injection that led to a collapsed lung, which is just, how can that happen? And it gives a little bit more, Greg, you were talking about it earlier this week on what is actually going on with this team and Anthony Lynn's thought process about saying Tyrod's our starter when he's healthy. It makes a little more sense now.
Oh, completely changes that. It completely changes that. And I gave the pep talk that Anthony Lynn needed to be forward thinking and start Herbert. But we found all this out after, and I think that it just shows that Anthony Lynn is probably someone that's going to protect and care about his players as much as anyone in the league. I would not have wanted to be the team doctor that's already dealt with a lot with this team to begin with. They had to walk up to Anthony Lynn, 5 minutes before kickoff and say, just want to let you know, not quite easy to describe this, but I've just punctured the lung of our starting quarterback with an ill-advised needle entry.
That's what you
point.
get for hiring.
I'm just gonna.
So you get for hiring Dr. Leo Spaceman as your team doctor.
I mean, he's got to show up to work every day too. He's still there at work. I appreciated Lynn actually saying, he didn't appreciate all the piling on the doctor too, because this guy, this is the last thing he wants to do. It was a mistake that happened that is almost unprecedented. Someone found a similar situation with Jerome Bettis about a decade ago for a playoff game, but it's going to change Tyrod's career, and they might get sued, the Chargers, for it, and the money could be involved. But for now, Justin Herbert steps into an unbelievable matchup for his first start that he knows about going into the whole week, because the Panthers, I have the craziest stat I've seen in this entire NFL season is that the Panthers almost have a Golston through 2 weeks. That's our old word for not having a QB hit or a sack in a game. They have one QB hit, but that's not even the craziest stat. The craziest stat is, according to Pro Football Reference, they have a total of 3 pressures in 2 games this season. I mean, that is unbelievable. To put it in perspective, that the Steelers have over 70.
Wow.
So it's like, this is a great matchup to just run the ball and do whatever you want and be hanging out back there and throwing passes. The Panthers' defense is rough right now.
Oh, my goodness. And now no Christian McCaffrey. He's got a high ankle sprain, and it's a 4 to 6 week timetable. He says he can accelerate that timetable, but we'll see. He's certainly not going to play in this game. I mean, Matt Rule is in a very, very tough spot to start his career.
He is. I would say the couple positives for the Panthers, though. I think that Robbie Anderson has fit in really well with them. DJ Moore they didn't, you're losing Christian McCaffrey. That is an absolute killer. They talked about the Panthers as a 1-15 team. I don't think that's who they are, but it is a problem when your first round pick on defense has not played well. K'Wan Short has not been himself. I mean, their whole crew
played. They need Short back.
Right.
They need Short back.
Like they need him.
The same
right.
him.
He's still iffy, and it's like their whole defense is essentially dudes that were in college a year ago. And sometimes that can create these wonderful stories where it's like, wow, it works and we should all do that. It's like, or you get this and they're getting this. And that's why they're giving up 30 points a week.
Yeah, this always felt like when Rule took the job with everything that was going on, a developmental year for them. And so far it's heading down that road. All right. That's every game that will be played Sunday and Monday, including that Monday night football, Ravens, Chiefs. My goodness, Brian Greasy, be ready, son. All right. Stan Hands is signing
Dan's
off.
best friend.
For The Quiet Storm, the old boss, Ricky Hollywood in West Hollywood. Till Sunday.